The morning silence was interrupted by a sharp sound of breaking glass, causing me to flinch in surprise. I was in the kitchen, contemplating a cup of cold tea that had sat on the table for a while. A sudden noise pulled me out of my thoughts, and I put down my cup before hurrying to the living room. My heart was racing and my mind was filled with anxious thoughts. I thought it might have been a home invasion. As I approached the window overlooking the garden, my thoughts were confirmed when I saw a dog, dirty and thin, wandering through the flower beds and well-kept plants. One of the bags of garbage had been torn open, spilling its contents onto the grass. The scene was a stark contrast to my garden, which had been my quiet retreat, especially since the loss of my grandmother. She had always ensured that the garden was well maintained, that the flowers pleased the eye with their bright bloom. Now, my sacred corner has turned into chaos. Without thinking, I opened the door and shouted, "Get out of here!" The dog suddenly turned his head, his ears pricked up, and he ran away. He looked at me and there was nothing in his gaze, no fear, no aggression. Instead, I saw a strange mixture of despair and defiance in his eyes. Taking a deep breath, I returned to the house. I opened the closet where old blankets were kept and pulled out one of them. When I returned, the dog was still standing at the edge of the garden, motionless, like a statue. Carefully kneeling down, I handed him the blanket and said softly, "Come here. I won't hurt you." For a moment, I thought he would run, but instead, he took a step forward and then another. When he was close enough, I reached out and touched his fur. His body was warm but so fragile, as if it consisted only of bones. When I carefully picked him up, I was surprised by how light he felt. When I brought him back to the house, the smell of dirt and street filled the air. But his presence didn't feel so alien, as if the silence was less oppressive. In the bathroom, the air was thick with a mix of dirt, garbage, and street life. My first thought was to wash him, but I hesitated. How would he react if I set him down on the floor? I turned on the water and heard the sound of it filling the tub. It made the dog alert, and he let out a small, plaintive whimper. "It'll be okay," I said, kneeling next to him. He tried to move away, afraid of me, but I waited for him to calm down. Then I gently lifted him and placed him in the warm water. At first, he tensed, as if he was preparing for something. She resisted at first, but after a few minutes, she began to relax. I gently applied the shampoo to the dog's dirty fur, massaging it softly. Under the layers of dirt, I noticed some scars that seemed to tell its story. This creature looked tired, but there was a faint glimmer of hope in its eyes, as if it believed in something good. I arranged for it to sleep temporarily in the living room, on an old blanket. While it was settling in, I went to the kitchen and opened a can of tuna, which was all I had. It ate slowly, as if trying to prolong the moment and surprise me. Instead of attacking the food as I expected, it ate carefully, with surprising grace. When it was done, I put the empty can away and returned to the living room. The dog had already curled up in its new place, its even, quiet breathing filling the room. For the first time in a long while, I felt like the house had truly become cozy. In the morning, I was awakened by a soft, quiet bark. When I opened my eyes, there was a dog standing next to my couch. Her tail was wagging slightly and there was a look of curiosity in her eyes. "Are you hungry?" I asked her with a smile. She didn't respond, but her expression spoke volumes. I went to the kitchen and found some food for her. As I fed her, I carefully watched her every movement. There was something special about this creature that I couldn't ignore. After breakfast, we both realized that we needed some fresh air. I didn't have a leash with me, but I found an old belt that would do the trick. The dog seemed hesitant at first, but eventually allowed me to attach it to her collar. We went outside into the morning air, which was cool and refreshing. The sun was shining through the trees, casting shadows on the ground. The dog walked beside me, sniffing around and exploring every corner as if trying to memorize the scent. As we stopped beside a large oak tree, I asked her softly, "What do you think of this place?" She looked up at the tree and seemed to understand my question. Then she looked back at me and wagged her tail as if to say, "It's beautiful." Of course, she didn't respond, but she looked at me as if she understood more than she could express. When we arrived home, she seemed much calmer, as if the walk had helped her feel more confident. I also felt strangely relieved. That evening, while working at the computer, I noticed the dog lying at my feet. From time to time, she would raise her head and look at me, and I couldn't help but smile. I gently stroked her and asked softly, "What should I do with you?" She looked at me as if she already knew the answer. The next day, I woke up with an unexpected feeling of lightness. A new rhythm of our life with the dog, which I soon named Husky, was beginning to take shape. She filled my home with the warmth I had been missing. After breakfast, I decided to learn more about her. The incident in the park didn't leave my mind. Laika's behavior and her response to a stranger were still unknown to me. It became a reason for me to think. We took a walk again, but this time, I decided to pay more attention to her behavior. Laika seemed calm, but every time we approached strangers, her eyes became more alert. At some point, she suddenly stopped in front of one house. Her ears were perked up, and her muscles were tense, and she let out a soft growl, staring at the window. "Calm down, girl," I said, gently stroking her fur. Laika didn't move her eyes from the house until I gently tugged on her leash. When we got home, I realized I couldn't ignore these moments anymore. Her behavior clearly showed that she'd experienced something in the past that was still affecting her. That night, I sat down in front of my computer to research her history. I learned about how trauma can affect a dog's behavior. It turns out that animals that have had difficult lives can react unexpectedly in similar situations. It was my first step towards understanding, but I knew it was not enough. The next day, I decided to take Laika to the vet to check if everything was okay with her health and possibly to get some advice on how to improve our relationship. Laika was a bit nervous at the vet's office, but she generally behaved calmly. After examining her, the vet confirmed that she was physically healthy. However, he suggested that I contact a shelter, as they might be able to provide more information about her. The vet said that Laika had been living near an abandoned house for a while, and that it seemed like she knew the place well. He suggested that this house might hold some significance for her, and I wondered if it was a place where she felt safe, or if it had become a source of her distress. That night, I couldn't sleep, thinking about Laika and her past. In the morning, I decided that we both needed some distraction, so I thought of our old family home outside the city and decided to take Laika there. I had been searching for a place to escape the hustle and bustle of the city for some time. I found the perfect place in an old house that had been empty for a long time. It was a place where I had spent many happy childhood memories. On a certain day, we decided to clean the house and make it our temporary escape. Laika, my loyal companion, followed me around as I cleaned, helping me restore order. Her energy and joy inspired me. In the morning, while I was preparing breakfast, Laika lay quietly next to me, watching as if she knew this place was special to us. After breakfast, I decided to explore the house further. In one room, I found an old library that had been covered in dust. There, on a shelf, I discovered a large box belonging to my grandfather's. At the bottom of the box was a photo that brought back memories of my childhood. It showed me wearing Laika's collar. Grandfather, sitting on a bench in front of this house, with a tailed dog next to him, surprisingly similar to a husky. She sank to the floor, holding the photo in her hands. Was it coincidence, or could this husky be related to my family? She approached me, put her head on my lap, and looked intently into my eyes. It was hard to tell whether this was reality or imagination. I desperately searched for a connection. Continuing my search, I went to the attic and found an old box of my grandfather's belongings. Among them, there was an old collar with darkened engravings. On the collar, the name Laika was written. When I picked it up, my hands trembled. This couldn't be coincidence. It felt like the past had reached out, connecting me to something significant. I went back downstairs, still holding the collar. Laika watched me with remarkable calmness, as if she understood the significance of the moment. She was waiting for my decision. I showed her the find. She sniffed it carefully and then lay down next to me. Among the letters, I found one addressed to my mother. My grandfather wrote that his dog Laika was more than just a pet to him. She was a true friend and confidant. He said that Laika could always sense his mood and supported him in difficult times. Her presence helped him through the hardest parts of his life. These words touched my heart. Maybe Laika had come to be a part of my own journey. I couldn't sleep last night, thinking about Laika and how she connected me to my past. I wondered if it was destiny, magic, or just coincidence that brought her to me. But as I looked at the sunrise, painting the sky in soft pink and orange hues, I realized that Laika had become a symbol of my roots and history. That night, sitting by the fire, listening to the crackle of the flames, I understood that Laika would always be a reminder of my journey and the people who shaped me. That which is important never truly disappears, but rather remains a part of our souls. Having made the final decision, I realized that Laika would remain with me forever. She had become not just a friend, but a part of me and my story. In my grandfather's old house, I found her collar and carefully placed it around her neck. "You're truly home now," I whispered, and she tilted her head, seeming to understand the meaning of my words. This chapter in my life, full of wonderful discoveries and emotions, had finally come to an end. As the sun's rays gently filtered through the leaves and the cool breeze refreshed my face, Laika was at her happiest. She darted between the trees, exploring every corner. Her energy was infectious, and before long, I found myself laughing joyously for the first time in ages. After returning home, I continued sorting through old things, feeling a sense of calmness and contentment. Laika, as always, was at my side, watching my every move carefully. In the attic, I came across several boxes with letters and photographs belonging to my grandfather. Among them, there was a note that caught my attention. My grandfather had written in it, "A house is not just about walls and a roof. It's about those who share your joys and sorrows." When I'm lonely, I look around and see that someone has already filled my house with life and comfort. These words touched me deeply. I realized that the house, which seemed empty before, now made sense. Laika became the very thing that brought life and comfort to this place. After that, I began thinking seriously about my future. The house in the country seemed like the perfect place to start a new chapter of my life. The city that I had left behind seemed distant and foreign. I smiled and whispered that everything would be okay from now on. Laika has been through a lot, but she is now at home. I selected all the necessary items at the store, and Laika was patiently waiting for me. Her tail swung gently from side to side, as if she understood that everything was meant for her. In the evening, we set up her corner together. While I was setting out her new toys, Laika settled down on the mat, and one of the toys ended up in her mouth. This simple moment when I saw her settling in the house filled me with joy. I looked back at my grandfather's old collar hanging on the wall as a symbol of the connection between the past and present. Laika approached me and put her head on my lap. My beloved dog snuggled into my lap and sighed softly. "You were here at the right time, Laika," I whispered, gently stroking her head. "Thank you for finding me." A few days passed and Laika and I became a real team. In the morning, we went for walks in the woods. In the afternoon, we worked in the garden. In the evenings, we relaxed by the fireplace. Together with Laika, it seemed like I found a new purpose in life in this old house. Sometimes, looking at her, I would remember my grandfather and all the warm moments we shared. Together, Laika has not only become my friend, but also a reminder of the importance of family values and the need to stay connected to one's roots. One evening, as I sat by the fireplace, thinking about how my life could have turned out, if this house had remained empty, I realized that I would have continued to live in the chaos of the city and lost myself in the daily routine. But now, with Laika by my side, things are different. She turned to me as if she understood my thoughts, her eyes radiating understanding. I reached out to stroke her, whispering, "We've come a long way together," realizing that this was more than just words. It was a sincere expression of gratitude for all she had done for me, and I knew that there would be many more happy days ahead. At that moment, it dawned on me that Laika had not appeared in my life by chance. She had come to remind me of the importance of love, hope, and the fact that even in difficult times, there is always something to look forward to. There is an opportunity to start over again. If you enjoyed this story, please share it with others who also appreciate and love life. After a few months, our life with Laika has been full of new colors and joy. Each day brings unexpected discoveries and moments of happiness. We continue to take care of our garden, which is getting bigger and more beautiful every day. Laika is always there for me, helping me with her small paws and wagging her tail in joy. One morning, while we were walking in the woods, the husky stopped and began digging under an old oak tree. When I got closer, I saw that she had found something interesting, an old tin box covered in dirt and leaves. Curious, I opened it and discovered old photographs and letters. They were my grandfather's memories that he probably hid there many years ago. Among the photos were images of our house, garden, and even the huskies when they were still puppies. The letters were full of warm words and memories from the time when Grandpa was young and full of energy. I sat down and started reading the letters, feeling tears forming in my eyes as I remembered those times. Laika sat next to me as if she understood how important these memories were to me. In the evening, when we returned home, I decided to create an album to preserve all the memories. Laika and I spent hours laying out the photos and letters, adding comments and notes to each one. It was an incredible experience. The feeling of being connected to the past and knowing that these memories would live on in my heart was overwhelming. Since then, Laika and I have grown even closer. She has become my loyal friend and companion, always ready to support and comfort me. We continue to take care of the garden and walk in the forest, enjoying each other's company and creating more memories. Every moment we spend together, I realize that Laika is more than just a dog. She's a part of my family and a part of my heart. One day, as we sat by the fireplace, I felt like I had finally found my place in the world. I no longer felt lost in the hustle and bustle of the city. Instead, I had found my home, my family, and my happiness. As if sensing my thoughts, Laika laid her head on my lap and purred quietly. I stroked her head gently and whispered, "Thank you. You make my life better." A few more months passed, and our garden transformed into a real paradise. Flowers bloomed, trees bore fruit, and birds sang songs. Laika and I spent lots of time outdoors, enjoying nature and each other's company. I started writing a book about our adventures, about how Laika had changed my life and helped me find my place. One day, while I was working on the book, a sudden barking from the hallway caught my attention. A husky was jumping around the house looking for attention. I went to see what my friend was so excited about and discovered that she had guests. They were my old friends who had decided to visit and see how I was living. I was happy to see them and warmly invited them into my home. We spent the day walking around the gardens, telling stories and laughing. Laika, our beloved dog, was the center of attention, and everyone admired her beauty and intelligence. In the evening, we sat by the fire, drank tea, and shared memories. At that moment, I realized that I had found not only a place in the world, but also a family friends, and happiness. A lot of time had passed since then, and our life with Laika became even more intense and joyous. We continued to care for the garden, explore the woods, and enjoy every moment together. Laika has become more than just a pet to me. She is a member of my family and a part of my heart. She has taught me to appreciate each moment, find joy in small things, and believe in the best. If you would like to see more interesting content, please subscribe to our channel and enable notifications. This way, you will always stay up to date with all the latest news. Your support means a lot to us. Thank you for your attention. See you soon.